you, Richmond.
Good morning to you, and thank you for the opportunity.
I
Happy
hope you're
Father's
well.
Day to you too.
Yes. Same to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. This morning we are back from the weekend, and one of the things we are looking at is the decision of government not to go ahead with the implementation of the increment in the Essdrl levy. Why?
Thank you for the opportunity. You'll recall that about 2 weeks ago, the government amended the Energy Sector Recovery Act, which was introduced originally in 2015, amended in 2017 by the previous administration with the introduction of street licensing levy, further amended in 2019, further amended in 2021 with also the introduction of sanitation and pollution levy. And in 2025 March, the government consolidated all the levies in there to have the energy sector shortfall and debt recovery levy. This levy was 93 pesos on diesel, 95 pesos on petrol. But the government amended it to add 1 Ghana cedi because of the challenges that we have in the power sector. The amendment was supposed to take care of the liquid fuels that we do not include or is not included in the electricity tariff structure. Implementation should have started on the 9th of June. The OMCs had engagement with government and asked that it should be pushed to today's 16th. That was agreed by government because government came to a conclusion that their concerns were legitimate. Today, even though the implementation have started, the government has decided to stay the decision pending some factors. What the government is looking at is to ensure that at all material times, the interest of the people of Ghana is supreme. You don't have a situation where in government looking to bring in more revenue to deal with the power challenges, you end up burdening the people of Ghana again. There were factors that led to the introduction. Those factors, as of now, the major one, in fact, the exchange rate is still stable, still around 10 Ghana cedi for the crude oil price and the price of finished products on the international market. Because of geopolitics, we've begun to see some rise in prices. Last week was around $60. As a close of business on Friday, had moved to about $74 because of the issues in the geopolitics sector. Basically, what is happening with Iran and Iraq. We all know that Iran is a major oil-producing country, and that once there's a conflict, there's a potential of affecting prices. The president has directed that the ministers of energy and green transition and finance keep a close eye on what's happening to ensure that the gains that have been made, where fuel prices have moved from 17 Ghana cedis to about 10 or 11, depending on where you purchase, is not eroded by the conflict that is happening. And that is why a decision has been made to stay the implementation, observe further what's happening on the international market and the geopolitics, and then the government, looking at all the other factors, will take a decision on a new effective date.
Well, what's the fear of government? Because you will still have implemented it, hoping that things will still stay stable.
The fear is that you don't want a situation where international market prices are going up, which will have an impact on the price on the local market. And also you implement the levy, which also has further impact on it. So it will be better to stay the decision, observe what is happening, do your critical analysis, and then you take a decision out of that.
Well, the MPP describes this. In fact, the minority in a statement says this 11th-hour postponement epitomizes this government's chaotic and fundamentally inconsistent approach to economic governance. That it just exposes the fact that this was not properly thought through. How do you respond to this?
Very unfortunate. And I'll take this opportunity to advise the MPP or the minority in parliament to stop the needless politics. You know, it doesn't help anyone. When you cause a mess and you have another person trying to deal with a problem, you don't antagonize the person. You don't necessarily politicize the issue because you're a politician and you must score political points. If you look at where we are today, the power sector, this government has been in power for 4 months. If you look at the problems in the sector, they supervised over that for 8 years. Where are we where we are today? If they had, in fact, if the government inherited a clean energy sector, would there be the need to implement or look for additional measures to raise revenue to deal with the problems? If you inherit 80 billion, if you inherit a deficit of over 2 billion each month, if you have fuel, liquid fuel, not included in the price tariff structure, and every time you have to look for money to buy fuel, if you're spending $1.2 billion on fuel, which is around 12 billion Ghana cedis, would there be the need to look for innovative ways to raise revenue or not? And that's what the government is doing. So they should just take their time, sit, observe, and look at how the government is dealing with the challenges that they couldn't deal with.
And but they're asking that you should repeal the levy.
I mean, the government has said that it will continue to monitor, it will continue to implement reforms, and that as and when it deems it necessary for a review should happen, the government will definitely do that. The decision to hold on with the implementation in itself is a review. And that is what the government is doing. It is not what we experienced in time past where every single person complained and yet they still went ahead to organize parties to celebrate the passage of a levy. That's not what the government is doing. The government is paying attention to the plight of the people of Ghana to ensure that at all times the interest of the ordinary Ghanaian is supreme. And that is why the president said the minister should observe so that the gains will not be eroded. That is a sensitive government. That is a listening government. It is not one that will cut a huge stick to celebrate a tax that people are complaining about. If you look at the groups or individuals who raised issues when this process commenced, you will see that most of them have endorsed it. COMAC said they don't have an issue implementing the one city. Initially, their issue had to do with the implementation date. But once government addressed it and then also addressed some of their proposals, they said they're okay. You have other groups that have endorsed the policy because would you prefer to pay 68% more for electricity, which will be the decision if government decides to include fishing of liquid fuels in the electricity tariff structure, or you prefer to pay 1 cedi, which is an indirect tax or levy, to ensure that you have a more stable power sector? That is the decision that we are looking at as a country.
And this is one of the things they responded to in their statement. In fact, this is what they say about the issue you raise with how this thing is urgently needed to help to support the power sector. And they said the deteriorating state of Ghana's power supply under this administration cannot and must not be attributed to absence of this levy. Any worsening of the current power situation must be laid squarely at the feet of this government's incompetent management. They are saying it is your incompetence that has led to what we are seeing, that if there's a worsening of the management, you should take responsibility for it and not blame it on fuel, that you're having difficulties with making up financing some of the aspects of the current arrangement.
That is false. That's completely false. And the government that is solving the problem is the one that is incompetent, and the one that created the problem. How will you describe that government? The one who created the problems that are being dealt with today. What we experienced in time past, where names were bandaged around, the NDC or His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was unfairly attacked, is what led to their 1.7 million difference at the polls. So they should take their time and learn and stop the needless politics. Because if they continue, we will move from the 38% to about 30%. Because whether they were competent or not was determined at the polls in December, was determined by the number of seats that they have today, was determined by the results or the number of votes that their flag bearer had. That that is, if you want to determine whether somebody is competent or not, there's no better resource than that. So they should allow the government, give the minister space to deal with the problems. And that is what the government is doing. The president has said that these energy challenges that we are experiencing would be a thing of the past by the end of his administration. And that is what the Minister of Energy is implementing.
In the meantime, the problem you're trying to address with the levy is still there. The money that would have come in to perhaps help and support will not come in immediately. So how would you deal with it in the absence of the levy?
In the absence of the levy, what we mean is that the government will still have to shoulder the burden of providing liquid fuels. Of course, it will have an impact on the fiscal space. It will have an impact on our finances as a country. But that will be the sacrifices in the meantime. It will be the hope of government that this issue between the parties who are fighting or the conflicts will be resolved as soon as possible, so that we'll get back to where originally we've been, which is the stable petroleum prices that we've seen over the period. But in the meantime, the government will have to shoulder the burden to raise the needed revenue to procure liquid fuels to ensure that the people of Ghana will not sleep or do not sleep in darkness.
Because the God Papa says now that government has paused the once Ghana City levy, is Doomsaw coming back? How do you respond to him?
No. The president has said it over and over again that just as it dealt with the energy sector challenges, the generation challenges between 2013 to 2017, that is what the goal is. That at all material times, the ordinary Ghanaian will enjoy stable, reliable power. So that if you would pay attention, I'm sure a lot of people will have noticed, the last 2 months, the grid has been very stable. You've had fairly good supply of electricity because of the measures that the government is implementing. As of December 2024, we're shedding load of over 700 megawatts. You can confirm this from Gridco through RTI. We haven't shed, but we are not shedding any load. It hasn't happened the whole of this year, the whole of May, June. Even with the maintenance work ongoing, we still haven't shed any load. And that is why we've had a fairly stable power supply. And that is the commitment of the Energy Minister with the support of the President.
In the meantime, you've been having some consultations with some stakeholders who were not happy that they were not consulted before the tax was passed. How's that going?
Very well. Like I mentioned, a lot of these stakeholders that initially, in fact, let me use GPRC. GPRC threatened to go on strike last week Tuesday. That did not happen because of the positive feedback from the stakeholder engagement. Like I said, the government engaged in stakeholder consultations before the passage, during the passage, and after the passage, it is still engaged in stakeholder consultation because every problem, every concern that is being raised will be addressed by government.
Richmond, thank you. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you, too.
Yeah. RICHMOND ROCKSON speaks for the Energy Ministry. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll turn to the matter of the National Service Authority.
Hisense is best known for all